There's an epidemic of older adults falling for AI-generated content. What started with bizarre Facebook AI slop that had us in disbelief of what some people would believe is real, is now evolving at a rapid pace and flooding social media. This is posing a huge challenge in ensuring that older people can separate fact from fiction, as they find themselves increasingly unable to navigate the digital world. While quote-unquote brain rot has been associated with the younger generations, namely Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it's an affliction that the older generations haven't been able to escape either, taking on forms that are more aligned with their interests. Defined by Oxford University Press as the supposed deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially viewed as the result of overconsumption of material, now particularly online content, considered to be trivial or unchallenging, it increasingly seems like older people are equally, or even more so, susceptible to it. But while many digital natives enjoy brain rot content with a degree of self-awareness, older people seem to be in deeper than they realize. And as the wealthiest and most politically powerful generation, at least in the West's biggest economy, this can have huge implications for them as individuals and our collective future. But before we get into it, if you're part of the 0.8% of my audience at 65 or over, and you're about to comment, well, I'm old and I'm just fine, stop making generalizations. Great. Good for you, this video doesn't apply to you. Or maybe it does and you'll learn something about yourself. Also, I'm going to talk about boomers and Gen Zs a lot in this video. I appreciate there's some spillover into other generations, it's just easier. Now, let's get into it. A good starting point when thinking about the difference between boomers and Gen Z is their styles of humor. I found Gen Z humor best explained by this Reddit comment. Have you ever been goofing around and doing a bit with your friends and the bit goes on a little bit too long? You start to grasp at straws and the jokes become somewhat far-fetched? Imagine one of those bits went on for like 10 years straight. The bit has evolved to the point where the original joke isn't what's funny. At that point, the humor is in how preposterous and involuted the content of the bit has become. Gen Z finds inane, chaotic things funny, like a spinning cat making the same 3 sounds to the tune of popular songs with increasingly high production values, or saying "mama, a girl behind you" over and over in a million different ways because a little girl said it in a single short video. It's the humor of a generation that grew up fully immersed in the internet, where jokes are continually added to and reworked in the form of memes, a democratic type of comedy. But unlike the memes of the early 2000s internet, there's a distinct lack of innocence to Gen Z humor, maybe born out of cynicism about the state of the world, or maybe social media's deprivation of a carefree childhood. Accordingly, there's a degree of acceptance among Gen Zs about brain rot, an awareness of the problem but equally a succumbing to it, ironically but also not ironically, as with everything with Gen Z. This, of course, contrasts with boomer humor, which is much more simplistic. Often this might be considered endearing or just cringe by younger generations, like minion memes or newspaper-style cartoons that rehash tired tropes about young people. A lot of it comes down to young people are dumb and everything's woke these days, but nothing quite beats the classic wife bad, because why would you like the woman you've chosen to spend your life with and who, in all probability, has shouldered disproportionate responsibility in raising your kids? But that's beside the point. A lot of this is based on an understanding of the world from a time gone by, but even in the age of social media, this humor persists. Notoriously on Facebook, which has become something of a digital nursing home despite Meta's repeated attempts to recapture a younger audience. If you want to learn more about that, give my video on the topic a watch after this one. Originally for college students only and mainly popular with young people for a long time after, boomers were late to join Facebook. Eventually, they joined in their masses though, reconnecting with old friends and becoming active in groups, especially local and nostalgia-focused ones. As Eve Ng, Associate Professor of Media Arts and Studies at Ohio University shared, baby boomers and Gen X really took to early social media platforms, especially Facebook, and one of Facebook's characteristics that suits a lot of members of these generations is that it feels more closed. As older people joined Facebook, younger people left, either because of the effect that older people had on the experience, or simply because other apps such as Instagram and Snapchat were more suited to them. Although not 100% true, as it's more broadly popular in countries outside the West, Facebook now has a reputation among many for being full of boomers. This pattern has repeated itself through the history of social media, with Instagram now having plenty of older users, and older users being one of the biggest areas for growth for TikTok, due in part to them saturating younger age groups. Even Threads has its fair share of older people, although they're disproportionately horny old men replying to bots. This has always been the problem with the way older people use social media, often doing so ham-fistedly, such as not quite understanding the public nature of their activity. If you're going to leave horny replies to bots, at least take your wife out your profile picture. Older people's challenges with technology are well known, and it's not just a stereotype. A study by Age UK, a charity for older people, found that almost half, 46%, of people aged 65 or over were unable to navigate the internet safely and complete the most fundamental online tasks. Cognitive challenges at university come with age definitely play a role in this. According to the Living Care Company, age-related physical and cognitive challenges can make it challenging for seniors to navigate modern tech devices and platforms initially designed with younger users in mind. Reduced vision, hearing loss, declining motor skills, and cognitive conditions can impact the willingness and ability to learn new tech. The scale of change is also a factor, with technology having changed vastly since they were young, after all. Many have gone from black and white TV to immersive VR and human-like AI. With that being said, it feels like there's a distinct lack of curiosity about technology from older people, not having the desire to grow and learn as technology evolves. As one TikTok user commented, "This genuinely confuses me though. Do they not have the desire to learn about anything at all? I can know something is AI generated the second I see it. If I'm confused by a new technology, I'll research and mess with it until I understand it. Do they just not care? At some point, it's got to be detrimental to the rest of society when older people refuse to learn new tech. This might be explained by the ever faster speed with which technology seems to be evolving, and the youngest having an ingrained mindset of adapting to new technology. This is what defines digital natives, Gen Zs, Gen Alpha, and younger millennials. Research shows though that the reasons for boomers' slowness to adapt to new technology are complex and varied, whether that be a fear of making mistakes, a fear of becoming dependent, or a skepticism about its benefits. But the fact is, they're woefully unprepared to deal with possibly the biggest brain rot culprit, AI, even more so than the rest of us. And as AI is well beyond photorealistic at this point, we're already seeing the worst of that play out. It's incredibly easy to create convincing images and videos with free apps, and as a result, there are thousands of dedicated accounts pumping this stuff out. Facebook AI slop is a testament to this. I think we've all seen the ridiculous, strange, disturbing images that get mountains of engagement and amens like shrimp Jesus, African children with elaborate inventions, injured soldiers, lonely centenarians. There's a remarkable consistency in the themes of this slop too, like religion, patriotism, resourcefulness, and sympathy. It's shockingly easy to get an immediate reaction from Facebook users who comment before attempting to question what they're seeing. But this kind of slop is already dated, superseded by the magic of video slop that pollutes short-form video platforms, especially meta-owned ones like Instagram and Facebook Reels. It turns out that few things appeal to boomers more than children's pageants and runway shows. The videos show AI-generated children tottering down runways adorned in elaborate, surreal outfits like spaghetti and meatballs, or riding tigers with rows of glitching people in the background. Like if you believe it's AI-generated, yeah, no shit. These posts have millions of likes and sometimes millions of followers. This, of course, appeals because old people love babies and toddlers, the reasons for which are numerous. Nostalgia, a sense of purpose, of being needed, something to talk about, the simplicity that babies embody. With that being said, not all old people love babies, as the commenters on this r/askoldpeople post were keen to point out. And of course, there's cute AI animals too, with boomers even believing cows smaller than your hand to be real. Much AI slop combines interests for maximum effect too, like patriotic baby pageants or animal baby pageants. They have no problem believing the insane scenarios in these videos, seemingly oblivious to the visual elements that make it clear their fate, such as glitches and distortions, as well as what a lot of us might call common sense. It's so effective because it targets the emotions of users who want to believe it's real, that they live in a world where tiny little cows exist, or joyful little toddlers strut down catwalks in costumes that are realistically too big for them to carry. When they're told that the videos aren't in fact real, a common reaction is anger, likely out of embarrassment and a sense of cognitive dissonance. It's understandable, after all, to be frustrated with a world that you could no longer understand. This is a far cry from the days when we were told, don't believe everything you see on the internet. And while we were reprimanded for excessive phone use, older people seem to now be glued to theirs. But it could be argued that this kind of AI slop is inconsequential anyway. Does it really matter if boomers think there are cows out there the size of a teacup? If there's one area where the ability to separate fact from fiction truly is consequential, it's the news, our source of understanding of everything going on in the world. So, are older people more likely to believe fake news? Well, according to the research, it's complicated. For example, according to a 2019 study, those 65 and over were 4 times more likely to share fake news links on Facebook during the 2016 presidential election than those between 18 and 29. Bear in mind that a lot more young people used Facebook back then. But is this the same thing as believing fake news? A 2022 study, Aging in an Infodemic, involving 281 older adults and 311 younger ones, found that news veracity detection was comparable between younger and older adults, and that age-related vulnerabilities to deceptive news are only apparent in very old age. According to a 2024 study involving 36 interviews with older adults, they were confident in their ability to identify misinformation online and did seem to have strategies in place for avoiding it, motivated in part by their own anxieties around falling for fake news. There have been multiple meta-analyses on this topic, aiming to synthesize the results from numerous studies to get to the bottom of this. A 2024 meta-analysis analyzed 256,337 unique choices made by 11,561 US-based participants across 31 experiments and focused on 4 different demographic factors: age, gender, education, and political identity. Despite their struggles in using technology, the study found that it didn't inhibit their ability to detect fake news, with older adults better able to detect fake news regardless of age, gender, or political leaning. In the author's own words, age had a positive effect on discrimination ability, indicating that older adults achieved higher overall accuracy. Moreover, we also found a negative and credible effect of age on response bias, suggesting that with increasing age, individuals were generally more likely to judge a news headline as false. With this being said, there's still quite a few limitations to this meta-analysis, such as the studies analysed don't factor in older people living in residential care facilities who are more likely to have cognitive limitations. Perhaps the most important limitation though, and one that came up a lot in the studies I reviewed for this video, was the recruitment of subjects online. This introduces an element of selection bias that's of particular importance when analysing a topic related to digital media, as it skews the results towards more tech-savvy older people. Putting aside whether or not older people are less susceptible to fake news as a group, let's consider some common factors among older people that might make them more susceptible as individuals. This was the focus of a 2020 meta-analysis on the topic, aging in an era of fake news. Cognitive decline is perhaps the most obvious factor, which can increase the reliance on mental shortcuts to evaluate the truthfulness of information, such as repetition. If a story is seen multiple times, it's more likely to be believed. This was the case in the analysed studies, which found that even if a statement was marked with a false flag, older participants were more likely than young people to believe it after seeing it multiple times. There's also digital literacy, such as the ability to detect manipulated images, which declines with age. When viewing altered real-world scenes, older adults miss added or removed objects, distorted angles, and inconsistent shadows. This element isn't taken into account when studies purely look at headlines. But perhaps the biggest factor, and possibly the most unique to older adults, is trust. For better or worse, interpersonal trust increases with age. Older adults give more optimistic answers to the question, generally speaking, would you say that most people can be trusted, or that you need to be very careful in dealing with people? They also report more trust in family members, friends, neighbours, and strangers. This trust is ill-suited to the digital world, where the strangers and sources of information we encounter online can't just be blindly trusted, partly because they might not even be who we think they are. Overall, the research on older adults' susceptibility to misinformation is mixed, but it doesn't paint an optimistic picture. Not all older adults are susceptible to fake news, just like plenty of young people are, but age is clearly a factor here. The implications of all this are grave though, and it's much worse than trying to get front row tickets to a non-existent AI toddler fashion show. This difficulty navigating the online world, where they easily misplace their trust in random accounts, puts the wider world and their own finances at risk. This is all exacerbated by emotions and flaws that aren't specific to old people, such as letting lust and loneliness override rational thought. For this reason, romance scams have become a huge problem. In the US in 2023, the year for which the most recent data is available, consumers lost $1.14 billion to romance scams, with an average loss of $2,000 per person. Bear in mind that this is only based on losses reported by victims, and the actual figure is likely much higher. You might have seen Catfished Scamfish series on YouTube, where they investigate the internet relationships of victims to see if their romantic partner is real. Spoiler, they're always scammers. If you've watched even just one episode, you've probably felt incredulous at how they could possibly fall for it, despite the endless red flags. There's lots of seemingly obvious tells, such as the fact that they have endless reasons they need money, or the fact that they are much younger and much more conventionally attractive, or the endless excuses as to why they can't do a video call or meet in person. If you've watched many episodes, you'll notice that, even though not all the victims are old, they definitely skew on the older side. And it's apparent that the lack of basic digital knowledge is part of the reason they haven't been able to deduce that they're being scammed. One of the first things that the investigation team does is a reverse image search to find any profiles that the scammer has stolen photos from. One of the first things we would easily do ourselves. And yet, this is a simple step that the victims are unaware of, something that might have prevented them from sending thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, to scammers. As mentioned, their too trusting nature plays a role here, but perhaps more importantly, their loneliness. For those who are widowed or divorced, there's a real difficulty in meeting people in older age, especially if they live in a small community. Many of the victims on Scamfish meet their scammer on online dating apps. Part of Catfish's effectiveness comes from their posing as younger, attractive people, even celebrities such as Johnny Depp. This underscores the fact that it's not just technical ability, but also a willingness to believe the impossible, because of their own unrealistic expectations and a desire for a life that they will never have. The possibility is just too enticing to resist. This is also the case for investment scams, which most commonly take the form of pig butchering, and are often combined with romance scams. The victim is lured into sending increasing amounts of money under the guise of an investment, often in crypto. They're shown fake screenshots or even fake logins that show their fictitious investment as having grown massively, encouraging them to invest further. They may be allowed to withdraw a small amount of money so as to keep up the illusion of the scam, but when they want to withdraw the full amount, they're charged a series of fees and never actually allowed to withdraw their quote-unquote investment, neither the original value or the inflated amount. The romance scam element is achieved by catfishing as an attractive lady or man, often presenting as rich and successful themselves. Of course, AI is making all of this much worse, as scammers don't need to use real photos, and these images aren't reverse image searchable, or they can use AI to edit real photos, even making AI videos to crudely simulate video calls, the avoidance of which has previously been an easy tell for scammers. The first ever video on this channel was about AI and romance scams. Quite a lot has changed in the years since, both on the channel and on the topic, so let me know if you'd like to see another video on it. The Catfish team do their best, and while most victims do come to terms with the fact they've been scammed, it can be very hard to convince them, even when all the evidence is presented to them. There's a real difficulty accepting the reality of the situation, including the humiliation that comes from knowing they've sent obscene amounts of money to a scammer, or that they're not actually dating a celebrity. They're just in so deep. While boomers' misadventures with technology might be something we laugh about, and their cluelessness can make for entertaining content, such as clips of them in disbelief that something that's obviously AI is in fact AI, it's hard not to have empathy for their situation. They've seen a drastic change in technology in their life after all, and are navigating a world they're vastly unprepared for, including changes in social structure that mean that the same offline communities don't exist as they did when they were young. Despite my interest in technology and continual efforts to stay up to date, I sometimes wonder how I'll fare in the future. It's easy to assume that digital natives won't meet the same fate as boomers, but that's far from guaranteed. After all, loneliness, or let's face it, horniness, doesn't discriminate by age. Many of us turn to social media for company, and an alarming amount of young people have been victims to sextortion scams too. But what makes boomers' susceptibility to misinformation online so consequential is their vast power. Boomers own $76.2 trillion of US wealth, 52% of the total, dominate Congress, occupy the presidency, and globally are some of the most likely to vote. The implications of such an influential demographic being unable to tell fact from fiction are grave. And if we don't get a handle on it soon, namely by protecting the older generations from misinformation, or even better by helping them protect themselves, things are only going to get worse. But what do you think? Do you find older members of your family falling for AI videos, or have they been surprisingly savvy? Let me know in the comments and hit those like and subscribe buttons while you're at it. I drop a new video every couple of weeks. Until next time, see ya.